Yeah, thank you, Kostya. And yeah, let me just admit one more person. All right, so today we have a very cool game that I'm about to share with everyone. Again, for those who don't know me, this is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn. I am from Boston. I have taught US Chess School before, so you might have already seen my earlier class. But today we have something very special. I am about to share with you my story, my preparation, and the game against the world champion, Magnus Carlsen. So this is going to be exciting. Not a lot of people have played the world champion. People already want to know the result. Okay. But I think it's pretty guessable, the result, but I'll keep it a little bit somewhat of a for you to figure it out as the game progresses. It's going to be more fun if you don't know the result this way, because you see the game is going to be quite interesting. So as Kostya mentioned, this is a very, very important tournament, Isle of Man. It's usually happening once a year, although due to the pandemic, they didn't have it last year. Although they made it even more important because 2 spots from this open tournament qualified to the last candidates. And this is a good trivia question. How many guys of you know who are the 2 grandmasters who qualified from the Isle of Man tournament to the last candidates? As always, please type your answers in the chat. Same as with the game, I'll be asking questions. All right, Alexeyenko, very good, young Russian player. And Wang Kao. Yep, and you can just yeah, send either direct message to me or to the group, that doesn't matter. Yeah, so these are 2 grandmasters that qualified from that tournament. So theoretically, if Kostya and I would play in the tournament, we can also qualify, right, Kostya? Although that year it wasn't a qualifying tournament, and we didn't quite get invited to qualify, but that's okay. This is just tells you that anyone who is playing in the open tournament can qualify. Now, to get to the Isle of Man open tournament is really, really tough. Just because I am a grandmaster and Kostya was international master at that time, and this was 2017, it wasn't easy. Everyone wants to play in this elite open tournament, and there's only a few physical spots in the tournament hall, right? So therefore, they have to cut the number of players. Luckily, I got to play 2017, and I got to play Magnus in round 2. We both won our first game, and I was really excited to face the world champion. I've never played Magnus before. Maybe, you know, possibly anonymously in a Blitz account on ICC a long time ago, but that doesn't really count. So before we even start going over the moves, because I think everyone is excited to look at the game and how Magnus played against me, I want to first talk about my preparation. How does one prepare against the world champion? What was the anonymous account game result? I think I lost, or maybe I drew one game. I don't remember. It was several games. But let's talk about my preparation. So for this game, I decided I'm going to play the move d4. Okay? Now, when you prepare, guys, for strong grandmasters, the first thing you do is look up their games on ChessBase. Obviously, that's the tool that I use, and a lot of you use that too. These days, though, online games, you can even use like Lichess and chess.com. So that gives you some more ideas. And yeah, opening tree, as Ryo's pointed, that's an interesting one, openingtree.com. I've heard about that tool. So one thing I want to talk to you about is preparation. And during my preparation, just to give you an idea what I had to go through, I thought, okay, if Magnus is going to try to play for a win, he may play f5 against me. Now, in the game, he ended up playing g6, the move I had not predicted, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit. He could play f5, so I had to prepare for that. He could play d5, right? And then within that, he can play various Slavs. He's played it before, or various QGD positions with e6. But the move that he kind of gravitates toward, especially at that time, was this knight f6. And then he kind of welcomes the Nimzo. So if I were to go this way, he would go for the Nimzo. I wasn't quite feeling it. Maybe I wasn't quite ready to, end up in the Nimso. I was gonna play knight f3, and after d5, I think I was gonna play knight c3. So here's a question for you guys. During my preparation, how many moves did I have to look at in this specific position after the move knight c3? Who wants to guess, just approximate, how many moves Magnus has played in the past? Like a ballpark figure. Somebody, 10, 12, 25. All right, that's a lot. 17. We got a lot of suggestions there. So let's start naming the moves and see if Magnus has played it. So somebody mentioned the Ragozin. Absolutely. That was one of my top preparation. Magnus has played the Ragozin before. What I also use in my thought process, Magnus thinks of me as a fish. He thinks of me as a weak player. Think about it, right, guys? He's 28, 27, number one in the world. At that time, I was rated 25, 24. He definitely wants something that's sharper. So when you are preparing, and this is the first tip from today's lesson, and your opponent has many, many moves he's played before, really think about how he approaches the game. He wants to play for win. So this is a little bit asymmetrical, right? Rather than bishop e7, which is a little bit more solid. He definitely could go here. The other big one is c6. I had to know what to do against that move. That's a huge chapter, as Sam Shankland is a big expert in these semi-Slav positions, or if I try to go active with Botvinnik with bishop g5. But also, I notice Magnus has a preference, a liking for this move a6. How many of you guys have seen this move before? This is kind of forcing my hand, because this is a pretty serious threat, dc4 followed by b5. And the thing is, a6 kind of prompts me to take. And we have this very important structure from the Queen's Gambit. Nope, it's not called the Chebanenko. Who knows the name of this? It's not the Chebanenko. Thanks for the opening advice. I'm playing OTB in 9 days. That's right. OTB is back, coming up. A lot of tournaments are back, so you guys definitely should prepare already. Okay, exchange variation. So it's kind of the Carlsbad. What I want to hear you say is the Carlsbad structure, named specifically after a tournament in Carlsbad. It's a town, I think, in Germany or Austria back in the day. And the idea is you get this guy out, f4 or g5. Black eventually tries to put the pawn there. You put the pawn there. You see the structure. And this is called the Carlsbad. The plan, of course, is the minority attack. And then black typically tries to play for kingside pressure and knight e4. I normally think of this as a Carlsbad opening, as an opening London. Okay, there we go. Carlsbad, last 3 letters of the name. Bad. Okay, yeah. So some people don't really like the Carlsbad. I can see why, but it's actually quite solid opening, and maybe Magnus could try this. But believe it or not, there's even this move here in this position. Yeah, I know that's a really weird one, but Magnus has played this one as well. So just even this is a tiny overview. Obviously, he can do this. He can do this. You see how the lines really add up? And I kind of had to prepare for all of this in addition to more sharp openings, such as he has played the Stonewall Dutch. And I feel like I am the player he would rather play the Stonewall Dutch against, because that's very asymmetrical opening, right? Lots of interesting chances. Has he played the England Gambit? I think you're talking about this Gambit. No, that's not Magnus territory, right? D6 or knight 6. No, he doesn't usually do this stuff, because Magnus is you have to keep in mind, guys, Magnus is a very deep classical player. He sticks to his principles, even though he could play aggressively when the position demands it, but he's really not going to go crazy against me early on in the game. Although I was a little bit surprised by already the first move. All this talk about him being classical, and boom, g6. I'm out of my preparation already, guys. I did not expect g6. He has really never played that move in a serious game before, especially I mean, he has definitely played it probably in Blitz Rapid, but I did not expect that at all. So this is, here we go. We are gonna face the modern or the perk. All right, so here is your question. Well, Eugene, you spent all this time, probably the day before or maybe the morning of, preparing for all these different setups. Why on earth you didn't review the move G6? And also, aren't you now upset because you did all this work and preparation and your opponent brings this move? Rip prep. Yeah, that's right. I bet you played h4. So here's the next thing, guys. As a chess player, I hope you guys are pretty strong chess players as you are. You should not be surprised when your opponent plays something you haven't looked at or completely new opening he hasn't played before. Therefore, you have to be prepared. Luckily for me, this is part of my repertoire. I am also an e4 player as well as a d4 player. And guess what? I was actually happy to see the move g6 because I am going to get into the line that I have analyzed, I think, half a year before for one of my students. And I never really got a chance to play this line in over-the-board game. And guess what? Out of the blue, Magnus, out of all the people, right, walks right into my preparation that I did a half a year before. And I'll tell you more about it as we get through the game. So I'm already really excited here. We're going to get a really sharp, dynamic battle. I'm playing the world champ. I'm white. Why not take the center? Ball club. Yeah, people are really excited about King E2. No, not quite. All right. So Magnus, of course, plays either bishop g7 or d6 as he's going to get into the same structure. And now I just basically play my prep that I did half a year before for this opening, knight c3, bishop g7, knight f3 or bishop e3. I wanted to start with bishop e3, honestly, to keep my options a little bit open. But there's nothing wrong with the move knight f3. This is also completely playable. All right, so here we go. Bishop e3. Magnus chooses the sharpest setup, right? He can play knight f6 at any moment. But no, he's going to go a6. Now, first question is, how many of you have seen this move a6? And what's the idea? And maybe you may even know the name. There is one specific grandmaster who has published an entire book on this setup. So why don't you guys try to think about it and try to answer these questions. So first question is, what is Black's idea? Most people are already getting it. Yes, the correct answer is he wants to play for b5. So he's exerting pressure indirectly by attacking my knight, right? He wants to put pressure with bishop b7. But the next question is, who knows the name of the person who wrote an entire book on this setup for Black? This is maybe a tougher question to those chess historians and who read books. Not a lot of people. Karl Robach. Nope, it's not Karl Robach. Magnus wrote a book? Nope. That's right. It is Tiger Hilla Peterson, or simply we call him Tiger. Person, yeah. So Tiger is a famous player from the Scandinavia. I don't know if he is which country exactly. Maybe Denmark. I could be wrong. Yeah, Dane. So guess what? Magnus is from Norway. Tiger is from Denmark, right? So Magnus has never played this setup in an official game, like a serious game before. Yet, that just tells you how much he knows. He knows exactly how to play this position. To me, that was just astonishing because he basically, I kind of got lucky that he walked into my prep, but I had no clue that out of all the people, Magnus would buy and read a random book by Grandmaster Tiger, and it's called Tiger's Modern. For those of you who want to look it up, this is the name of the book and this is the name of the setup. He's a Swede. Okay, so there we go. So corrected. Sweden is very close to Norway. So Magnus definitely read his book. Moreover, he knew all the main ideas for Black. So there's a little bit of a history lesson for you. So that means what? Well, how can you take this into your own chess? Well, let's say you're playing against the relatively unknown player, or let's say that player doesn't have a lot of games in database, yet you know who his friend is or his coach is, you may sort of guess which opening he may play. Maybe his friend will show him a few lines, or his coach. So this is the kind of preparation is involved in the World Youth events, where there's a lot of young players with their coaches. You kind of try to guess which opening they play and that sort of thing. I had no clue, by the way, that Magnus was going to do this against me, but I had my own idea, and I'm going to play knight f3 as part of the plan. I'm simply developing, guys. Magnus says, all right, b5. Very aggressive, right? And am I scared? First question, right? Am I scared when somebody, world champion, unleashes b5 on me? Let's see what people think. Am I scared? No, no, yes. Am I scared? So most people think I am a little scared. Let's give it a little bit more time for them to answer. I think the right question you want to ask is, are you guys scared? Let's say you are facing a player of Magnus caliber strength, and he just played b5 on you. What's your immediate feel? You're like, oh man, this guy is not respecting my chess. He just wants to, go all out, caveman style, play bishop b7, b4, and just crush me. I would play knight b1 and panic. And the right answer, guys, here is absolutely do not be scared. Yeah, maybe a little nervous, but the key answer that I gave, remember earlier I said, this is still part of my prep. Now, luckily, one of my students, half a year before this game, okay, faced this opening and he didn't know what to do. So we did some work together. We actually did some work using the chess database tools. I'll show you one of the key reference game that I remembered during the game, as well as looking it up a little bit in the Tiger. I think I had the book Tiger Modern to see what he recommends for black, because he is the big advocate. And I felt, see, that's the thing. You have to choose the moves that give you the initiative, how to punish this type of stuff. And moves like a3, for example, are not bad, right? Just stop in b4. But to me, it doesn't quite fit my style. My style is very much development first. Maybe I need to sacrifice material. And obviously, don't be afraid of the pawn move b4. So basically, long story short, you should have a complete trust in your chess sort of upbringing, in your chess intuition. White did not do anything wrong in this game. He played, if you think about it, e4, d4, knight c3, knight f3, develop his bishop. Why should you be scared? That's my answer. I didn't do anything wrong, right? The only way you make, you may lose in chess, by the way. That's the only way. If you make a mistake, if you make something that's not the move that according to the positional needs. Development is always good, especially in the first stage of the game. I want to develop as quickly as possible. Therefore, most people already guessed my next move. Bishop d3, simple chess. b4, so what? He's making too many pawn moves. I can just play knight e2 and knight g3 if I want. The simplest, right? Just transfer the knight to g3 and start undermining that pawn with a3 or c3. So this is very important, guys. White did not do anything wrong. Don't be scared, even if you are facing the world champion. All right, so here's how the theory continues on this line. Magnus whipped it all out in literally minutes. He plays knight d7, and here is the big deal, guys. I am well equipped for this move, knight d7, and I play e5. Exclam, why can't black win a pawn? First question, guys. Start putting your chess heads, chess brains on, turning them on, start calculating. Why can't Magnus just win the central pawn with d takes e? Obviously, I knew about it because this is part of my prep, but most of you guys may not know it. So you can kind of try to figure it out. Right, so what if he just plays, let's say, d takes e? What do you do? Yep, some people are already picking up the main idea, but some people are still confused. D takes E, knight takes E5, bishop D4. Be careful. There's knight takes F3 check intermezzo. And yeah, if you take on E5, bishop E5, queen F3, I'm not really sure what you're accomplishing there. All right, queen F3, he can easily just protect the rook. So there's only one move here, guys. Again, kind of like a hint. There's only one move that gives white an advantage, and you have to figure it out. All the other moves are not great. And of course, the answer is bishop E4. Bishop E4. So whoever said bishop E4, I saw a couple people said bishop E4. You're on the right path, but the key trick has to be recognizing that once this diagonal gets cleared, there's a bishop A7 trick. It's a very basic tactic, but these are the kind of tactics that really, these little tiny tactics make up these opening lines. So I was aware of this, just to show you what could happen. I could obviously play bishop A7 at any moment, but the strongest line, the best line, is to actually castle. And only after king E8 do you play bishop A7. For example, here he's just completely dead. And if he tries this move bishop D7, in that case, right, I can actually be quite sneaky. Now bishop D4, and I'm going to use the pin to my advantage. Takes, and it's game over. So tactically, he is busted after this little quiet bishop move, bishop E4. So that's a kind of a big surprise. A lot of people may fall for that trap. I want to say that when I did prepare my student, I want to say his opponent did take, and his opponent kind of fell apart after bishop E4. It was a really fast game. It was like some random club game, not really important. But if you really want to kind of figure out how many people fall for that trap, you can do a quick online search. And there's already somebody fell for that trap. So you can see that. So it's not totally easy to figure that out. All right. So let's keep going. Magnus whipped out his next move instantly, bishop B7. Did he know about the trap? Absolutely he did. Again, I was really astonished. He knows so much about openings and about chess. I didn't realize that. Now, I specifically studied this position, so I knew about it. So he, of course, has to deal with my next move, E6. That was the whole point, by the way, of my setup. I don't want to babysit this E5 pawn. I don't want to take. I don't want to waste another tempo. I'm going for the pawn sacrifice. Now, most of you who don't see this, who have never seen this idea E6, definitely add it to your arsenal of weapons, how to kind of break down coordination in opponent's camp. I think most of you, though, have seen in some form this kind of pawn sacrifice. So let me know in the chat if you've seen this idea before. The point is after pawn takes, you play knight G5, and you force knight to F8. Now his coordination is lacking. Oh, I've used it OTB. Okay, so some people haven't used it, but in the wrong position, I see. So yeah, I'm quite happy that you guys are familiar with this. I would even call it standard pawn sacrifice. Because the thing is, even though you're not going to win the E6 pawn anytime soon, yeah, he's going to try to untangle with this stuff, right? Maybe king there, knight F6. But the problem is the chronic weakness, the pawn on E6, is never going to go away. Yeah, good point. There's one in the Caro-Kann. Yeah, there are many openings where white just goes this E6 pawn sac. So again, even if you're not quite playing the specific line, you could figure this out during the game. So here, I simply castle. Of course, Magnus first plays queen d7. He, again, plays this instantly. I was aware of another trap, by the way. If he plays h6, there's more than one trap in this line. Yep, in the Alekhine, you can do this trap. Yeah, most people are getting this really fast. Yeah, of course, it's a cool idea. Once again, who fell for this kind of trap? If you do an online search, Peter Svidler against Colin McNabb. Svidler crushed black against a grandmaster, right? So you see, even grandmaster can fall for this trap. Yeah, high-rated player, 2450. So what I'm saying is These kind of things are important if you know these lines, but just to show you the statistics, queen d7 is by far the best move. And that's what Magnus played. He played all of this instantly. So I'm going to go back to the online database in a bit to show you the key game I'm referring to. Now, here is the next thing. There is no way right now White can get his pawn back immediately. I am a pawn down against the world champion. Am I afraid? And of course, by now, you should say the answer is no, because I'm still in my prep, right? Why should I be afraid if this is the move I prepared at home? So what, I'm a pawn down. And you need to have a little bit of confidence, right? Especially when you play a world champ, to not simply say, you know what, I'm down a pawn and that's it. All right, now the next question is, this is probably the hard part of these positions. There is no immediate way to gain the pawn back, nor is there immediate way to checkmate the king. You have to simply trust in your development. Look at your coordination. White has beautiful coordination. Black's coordination is really lacking, nor is he interested of castling queenside right into the attack, right? Then we're going to play a4 and checkmate him. So it's a really long story how Black is going to untangle on the king side. In the meantime, I've got a target. Why not put my rook on the half-open file? Very simple chess. Okay, guys, so rook e1 is what I played. I'm not in a hurry, and you have to have confidence in your position to play moves like that, especially against the world champ. All right, so there's a question. Why not b4 to play a4? Good question. I guess my main thing is I may play a4 later anyways, and why weaken my diagonal? He may play c5, for instance, or it may be vital tempo loss if he tries to play like h6, knight f6, and quickly coordinate. Whereas I know that a4 is part of my plan. I know rook e1 is part of my plan. There's no need to really play b4, in my opinion. So that's why I played rook e1. But remember that I said there is one key game specifically that I did vaguely, not exactly move by move, but I vaguely recall that went like this. And after the move knight f6, I said in my notes, I wasn't quite sure if I had this position at home with insertion of the move h6 and then knight f3. Yeah, I mistyped knight f1, knight f3 there. So basically, I had a pretty good idea what to do, but I didn't know exactly what to do, right? It's one of those situations, you looked at it a long time ago, you kind of know the general plan, but you don't quite know move by move sequence. But the game that I was kind of referencing in my mind was the game between none other than Vishy Anand against Peter Svidler. And guess what? It's an online database, and the move, I believe, was bishop d2 in that game that was played. I think it was bishop d2. Let me check. Yep, that's the Anand Svidler. You see that top game, 2770 player. And now the funny part, you guys do remember that Svidler used the same idea and he beat McNabb. So this is my online reference. So it's an older game, much older game, but the key is the ideas. You got to know the ideas. 1998. Now, some of you have not even been born. That's how old this game is. But Vishy Anand, legendary Vishy Anand, already used this idea, this concept. So I definitely picked up the idea from that game. And obviously, you know, you guys have access to the best chess engines in the world. Yeah, Freycinet has played it. Freycinet, we know he's a strong theoretician. Especially if you have access to powerful engines, you realize, yeah, all of us, that's right. Yeah, none of you have been born. You realize that this position practically is actually quite difficult to play for a human. Is renting cloud engines worth it? That's a good question. I mean, I'd say it depends. Like, it depends what kind of opening prep you're doing. If I'm doing opening prep for some of my 2700 students, it's definitely worth it, right? But if you're doing prep for, like, 2000 and below, is it really worth investing into cloud? I'm not so sure. If you're doing it for 22, 20, 2300, I mean, that's probably maybe, right? Because a lot of new ideas may come in. So that's where you probably want to discuss if you have a coach or somebody who's helping with your opening prep, because sometimes it is expensive. Yes, I agree with you guys. But sometimes cloud also shows you some interesting ideas. Now, of course, I knew just the general idea. And I did not know exactly, did Bishop play Bishop d2 here, or did he play something else? So I played a different move, guys. And believe it or not, my move a4 is actually a really good move, right? It has only been in a few games, if you look at the database, right? Now, I wasn't aware exactly if anyone else played a4, but I knew the main ideas. And the main idea is black's coordination is lacking, right? I need to undermine the queen side and open up files. Okay, guys, so the key here is you have to undermine the b5 pawn, open up files, even at the cost of the second pawn. Believe it or not, I'm about to lose the second pawn. So game gets really, really excited here. Let's keep watching. b4, I expected Magnus would do that. He wants to keep the game close. Did Magnus know this? This is a good question. At some point, Magnus started thinking on his own. I think he did not know the move a4, I'm guessing, but he did play b4 instantly. I think he played b4 instantly, but at some point he's going to go into a super duper long thing. I'll show you when. And now, guys, you're probably not going to believe my next move. I just simply say, okay, Magnus, please take the second pawn. It's not in his interest to play a5, right? Then I'm going to play c3 and use the b5 outpost. And what really surprised me is Magnus did not hesitate for too long before he took the second pawn. I mean, the guy is extremely confident to go into this position as black. I mean, he's, after all, #1 in the world. But still, I would be a little scared to say, you know what, with my king stuck in the middle like that, the rooks are not connected, this pawn is weak, these pawns are all broken up, white has perfect coordination, yet I am 2 pawns down. And some of you may say, you know what, I'd rather get the 2 pawns and play this position. Some of you may say, I love to attack, I'd rather take white. So here's a good question. Let's ask people, some of you, which side you would prefer in the practical game. Okay, so one already says, I'll take black. Okay, good. Couple of people already are taking black. Okay, because to me, I would never take black, honestly. It goes sort of against my chess intuition to be in such a cramped position. But again, everyone has a different style. People want polls. It seems like we definitely want a big number. So a lot of people are preferring black. That's big shock to me, actually. Honestly, I haven't polled a lot of my grandmaster friends, but this is a position that I would probably use it against some of them just to get a feel what if they take white or black here. Because I would never take black in this position. I really like my coordination. I feel like it's easier to play with white. And the argument, so what, you're 2 pawns down, doesn't really bother me, because my argument back is, so what, you're 2 rooks down, right? Your rooks are not in the game, right? The rooks are more valuable than pawns. So if you can prove to me how you're going to get the rooks back in the game and king into safety, okay, that's a valid point. But to me, it's very important to pay attention to the pieces that are on the board and not to the pieces that have left the board. And the next question is quite valuable here, by the way. I like your question. How will you attack the enemy king on e8? Excellent question. I love that question. So let's think about that, guys. What did I play next here? Black looks quite solid, right? h6 is coming. King f7 is next. He's probably going to regroup at some point. I don't have any clear, way of winning material right away. And my next move is queen e2. I actually don't have a whole lot of threats with queen e2. All I'm doing is connecting my rooks. Although I do take it back. I do have one threat. I specifically want to discourage him from ever playing a5. Now the queen has to babysit that pawn, right? The moment the queen leaves back, he's going to lose that b pawn. So this queen feels a little bit awkward on a4. And Magnus senses that. He senses that the b pawn is about to be lost. He has a very good feel for positional chess. He says, you know what? I'm going to first play h6, which already is a wrong move, but he follows up correctly with later moves. After knight f3, I'll come back to this position. King f7. Here I played bishop d2. B pawn is gone, guys. And Magnus correctly just gives it back. And I take with knight c3. He has to move the queen. And this is the key position that I'm going to go back to. Before I go back here, I do want to show you a couple of moves. So there is one specific engine line that Magnus did not see, neither did I during the game. It's this remarkable move c5. It's not the move that you would normally consider when you have no development to open up the game, but it's a very specific tactic. Let's see if you guys understand what's the point of this c5 tactic. So I'm probably going to take the pawn and say, so what? What's the point of c5? Most of you already see the idea, right? Well, h6 does weaken g6, but h6 is generally part of his plan. But here he has a very concrete move. Yes, it is queen c6. Believe it or not, after queen c6, the engine says position is roughly even, meaning that it's pretty complex for humans, but objectively, white has just enough for at least equality, but maybe no more than that. And so this is what he had to go for. This is engine's top line. I would have to deal with the mate threat, and then he'll take back the pawn, and at least he's not going to lose the b pawn. So this is his best line. He did not do that. He played the standard move. By the way, in the book, in the Tiger book, this h6 king f7 plan later, and then queen coming to d7. This regrouping is actually mentioned, not in this specific position, obviously, but Magnus knew the general plan, so he played h6, which turns out to be a mistake. Black is worse long term. I play knight f3. King f7. He tries to connect the rooks and move the knight away from f8 at some point. Bishop d2. The b pawn is doomed. He doesn't really want to play a5. It's not going to help him, right? So he basically gives up the b pawn. I could have played knight b4 and then play c3. I didn't really consider this seriously. I think engine showed this at some point, but the move that I played is very human and very good. Simply take back on b3, and here Magnus plays rook b8, and we come to the next critical moment of the game. The opening is over, guys. We have ourselves a very interesting middle game. My question is, what should white do? And of course, it's very tempting to say, haha, I can get my pawn back on a6. So why don't you take a moment or two here? I don't want to take the pawn. Intuitively, I also did not want to take the pawn, and that's the right decision, guys. When you're attacking, unless you really don't know what to do, why would you take that pawn? That pawn is gone. You can literally take it next move, the following move, the move after that. It's not going anywhere. I do have a very nice light square bishop, as you guys pointed out. It's looking at his king, right? And I really, really think the next move is very critical to my position. I played kind of an interesting move. I played rook a3. I said this is probably the first hard move of the game. Up to now, my moves, a little bit more or less the ideas I knew from my preparation, play for e6, play for a4, connect my rooks. But this is already me really trying to dig deep into the position. Yeah, a6 pawn is still mine, right? Mine for the taking. It's not going away, right? But I guess what I really like about this move, you may think, oh, my idea is to protect that little b pawn. It's not really the main idea. The main idea is, yes, I could double, but maybe the rook is actually quite well placed here. But who knows? If the b pawn goes to b4, that rook may actually join the party on the third rank. Right? You never know when that could happen, but when you're attacking, you want to get all your pieces involved. So I really like the rook a3 because there is so many ideas behind that move. Okay, Magnus has a hard task of defending and regrouping, but he plays quite strongly. Knight d5 is a very good move. Obviously, I don't want to take on d5. I played knight e4. to discourage also trades and trying to get more pieces towards the king side. So if you think about this position, this is my sort of area of attack, right? I am keeping an eye on that pawn though, but it's not my main goal. My main goal is to checkmate him. All right, so far so good. Magnus says, okay, I'm gonna hide on h7. That's his idea, right? He wants to put the king on h7, maybe somehow get this f8 knight out, maybe get the rook out. So he's trying to regroup. Question is, how do you attack? To me, actually, my next move is super easy. I would play it in a heartbeat in a blitz game. But maybe for some of you, it's not the most obvious one in the position. So let me give you a couple moments here to think about it. You can also come up with this move from pure prophylactic thinking. Kind of, you know what your opponent wants to do. How do you prepare for that? Yes, Arnav, Santosh is close. Arnav is definitely right. Yeah, you guys are pretty much on the right idea. You have to play this move h4. It's a very easy move to play, especially if you know your opponent wants that. Now, wouldn't it be cool? He didn't do that, by the way. Wouldn't it be cool for the game to finish like this? 23 move checkmate against the world champ. Although it's wishful thinking, of course, but hey, you can show it to your friends and say, you could have beaten the world champ if you played king h7. It's a double checkmate, exactly. And the queen is also under attack. You don't give a double checkmate that often with the idea of a fork at the end. Yeah, that was really awesome. But of course, I had to contain myself from smiling because maybe Magnus would have realized my plan. But of course, he's not going to walk into this. You fork your opponent, queen, knight, king, and pawn. That's right. So yeah, this is just game over. I don't really see any defense after h5. He's just collapsing. So no, Magnus plays a very good move. Queen e8. He's regrouping. He's overprotecting his weakness, right? The g6 pawn. And here again, I did not see a clear path to attack. If I play h5, so what? What's the next move? He can play g5 even, right? What's next? Right? I have to, guys, adjust. Remember how I said I always have a backup plan, get the a6 pawn, and I thought, you know what? At this point, I could snack on a little pawn. And I think this is not a bad move, even though it does remove one of my attackers from the game, but I just couldn't see how to make that bishop very useful. So I think it's not a bad move, though. I think it's fine. He takes, queen takes. Finally, I've got my material back. I'm pretty confident about my position, right? Black has a lot of defenders. Yep, not easy to break through. Still, white is not worse. I knew about that much, right? I'm the one with all the space and pressure against his king. Yet he's Magnus. He's the world champ. And the world champ plays bishop f6. Solid. Queen c4, regrouping. Knight d7. How would you eval this position? What should white play? Not an easy one at all, guys. Not an easy one at all. I don't want to take on f6. And here I realized that, you know what? I should not really forget about this weakness. And I felt like white is better, honestly. I just wasn't quite sure if it's, you know, better enough for like a win or for like a win, like winning the game on the spot. No, it's probably just a little bit better. So knight g3 idea. I decided with knight c3 actually to try to put a little bit more pressure on this knight as well. So he of course plays knight b6. I go back. He plays queen f7. Now huge, tempting move. Queen takes pawn. Right? I was really tempted, but no, I knew it's a bad move. Then he just trades and gets an excellent endgame. That's sort of the theme of this game later, guys. I'm going to give it away a little bit, is I did play something similar. And I am not better. He's totally fine, even though I pawn up. So look what happens next. I played knight e4. I said it took me a lot of effort not to go up a pawn against the world champ and try to play, even though the endgame is slightly equal. Rook f8. once again, I am being invited to take on f6 and trade queens with queen 6, e6. And here, guys, under pressure, unfortunately, I succumbed to pressure and I failed to find the best move. I think I was down to maybe 10 minutes here. And I knew that the game is extremely complex if I leave all the pieces on the board. And I wanted simplicity. And I played a bad move. This is my mistake. This is the downfall of white. Panic. With about 7 minutes or so left, or even less than 10, I had 7 minutes. Yeah, and then I said in my notes, I would never play that move against a low-rated player, like a 2200. Why did I play it against Magnus? And the big lesson here is psychology, right? When you're playing a stronger player, you really tend to look for safety. Like, this seems like a pretty safe position. I'm up a pawn, but it actually goes against my previous play. The entire game, I didn't care about safety. I was trying to attack. I was trying to put pressure. And this is a big mistake. Instead, of course, I should play b4. I also considered knight g3, but b4 is the best. And here we go. That move that took me a long time, many, many moves ago. Guess what? The rook has participated in the game. The pawn can go to b5. The rook can go to a7 if I have to. I don't need to. The pawn is protected. But I'm really happy here. And yeah, other than psychology and just being a little bit afraid to get into time scramble in a complex position, yeah, I agree. I would prefer white as well. So now we have a turning point of the game. So the next stage is instructive endgame from Magnus. So I'm up a pawn. I'm not better. I'm also not worse, but it's a little bit easier to be black. He plays rook b8, regrouping. And I said in my notes, it felt like white should make a draw easily, but no, it's not that easy. There's this annoying knight. And yeah, this extra pawn is meaningless, right? Look at these crappy pawns. And little by little, I am getting outplayed. Okay, so I played rook c1. He is regrouping. Very good move, knight c8. I'm also regrouping. Yeah, I didn't feel quite right during the game, but it's not a mistake. And this is the critical moment right here. We're coming up. Here is the real mistake. I played pawn takes, b4. That's my downfall. I kind of should have, yeah, this is the wrong time, and talk about bad time. I should have anticipated pressure here, and I should have played g3, right, with the idea king g2. Instead, I kind of got stuck with my king. Now he's got a huge tempo on me, and I've got a back rank issue. Instead of me checkmating him, look at the position. Everything, the roles are reversed. I am getting checkmated. My bishop is horrible. My pieces are horrible. Wow, what a quick turnaround. And honestly, we are about to reach move 40 here in the game. I already felt like I am losing. Even though, you know, objectively, I'm not quite lost, but Magnus just plays the stage of the game perfectly. G4 is just excellent. Yeah, the power of the world champ here is in full display. So I sort of have to abandon my king e2 plan, because now, of course, here comes his knight, and there's this beautiful intermezzo. I couldn't really stop knight g3. I was really like shocked. There's all these tactics in the end game, right? My king is just getting surrounded. So instead, I simply took, and of course, this is Magnus's bread and butter, these end games. My king is weak. My terrible pieces are absolutely horrendous here, and I'm just suffering. But if you count the pawns, hey, white's not doing so bad, right? Resignable, that's a little bit too strong of a word, but it's not far from the truth. But of course, I'm not going to resign. We did finish time control 2 moves ago, so I'm fighting on. I'm going to give up one of my pawns to regroup. Very important intermezzo, f5. Again, sign of a world champion. These little intermezzos to push my king a little bit further away is very important move. Now rook takes, hitting the b pawn. I said, okay, I'm going to protect it, hit the rook. Rook c2. Again, I find myself, you know, all I need to do is trade everything off. It's very little pawns left, but it's not super easy. It's not easy to trade pieces. I'm just really struggling. So I played b5, trying to at least, you know, get that pawn out of danger. And now Magnus comes up with a brilliant, simple plan. Just building up a maiden net around my king, because my king has no moves. I really love how he comes up with this plan. Simple move, knight f6. Okay, I said I'm going to play rook b3. Simple move, because I have to stop this, right? So the reason why I play rook b3, my main idea was to stop this mate. Now knight g4 is met by rook b2. But guess what? Magnus has a different mating idea altogether. Rook e2, first paralysis, and then after b6, he simply takes, and after this move, it's time to resign. Actually, let me show you. Yeah, I resigned here, but I want to show you how I lose. So maybe you can calculate it out, actually. What happens if rook b2? It's pretty easy win, because rook b2 is the most natural move here. But I resigned because I knew I'm losing. Knight g5, knight f3. Very simple chess, yep. So yeah, very simple chess. So again, for those of you who haven't really, most of you already see it, it's a very simple tactic based on the fact that I'm overloaded here. So he just basically, with the tempo, gets the knight to f3. Very good job. And yeah, it doesn't matter, king h5. In my notes, I have that. Now, wouldn't it be cool, guys, to remove these pawns entirely from the board and even remove this knight? But again, this kind of thing will never happen. But I knew that two knights obviously don't win without the pawns, but it's impossible. So yeah, that was my game. Let's now talk about the lessons learned. It's important to summarize what we've learned here. So let's go back here where I resigned. Yeah, let's read the lessons learned. So didn't expect the opening, number one, remember? But luckily, right, I did some preparation for the line that may happen in my repertoire. So you have to have a really thought out repertoire, even if you're a d4 player. What if your opponent plays g6? Okay, you kind of have to know what to do there. You know, I should not blame myself for not preparing for g6, because I did look at g6 maybe a couple months ago, but luckily Magnus fell sort of for my prep, although it was an old prep, but it was still pretty good prep. Number two, and this is very important when you play high-rated players, don't be afraid to sacrifice material. I feel like a lot of you guys, when you face high-rated players, you go into like a little shell. You're a little bit afraid to give up pawns, sometimes pieces. But if the position demands it, or if the opening demands it, or if it's part of your preparation, especially if it's part of your prep, don't be afraid to sacrifice material against high-rated player. Okay? Then, of course, what's the big lesson next? Panic and time pressure. Yeah, I would never play knight takes f6 against a low-rated player. I mean, especially the game was unfolding really nicely for me. I just couldn't quite, finish Magnus off. There was no checkmate or anything like that, but I had a nice attack. Just play b4, and the lesson is stay true to yourself. Or for me, stay true to myself. If I start out with a nice attack and game, why do I need to go and seek some equality or a draw? So this is very important. And the fourth one is actually quite interesting that I noticed. The side rook attack, I totally kind of missed this rook h4 that he's hitting the d pawn and quickly regrouping. I think it was like a blunder on my end. So that's just a little mini note for me. Watch out for side rook attacks, because I probably did not anticipate that. So these are the lessons I've learned from this game, and I hope you guys have now, by watching my mistakes and this game, can apply it to your own games, especially as OTB tournaments are coming back. A lot of you guys may be facing IMs and GMs, and you're going to be running into the same exact problems that I ran against Magnus. You got to really know yourself and stay true to yourself in these critical moments. All right, guys. So any questions, last minute questions about me and Magnus, you can ask me. Did I analyze the game with Magnus? Did I, these are kind of, I can happily share with you if you're interested. As a matter of fact, after the game, Magnus knew that he was, maybe busted is too strong a word, but he knew that he was worse. We kind of both knew that. And we also knew that I shouldn't have taken on f6. So it's one of those games that there is really not much to analyze. Like, we both knew what was happening, and we kind of like, I knew that I made a mistake. He knew that I made a mistake. His endgame skills are just incredible. And typically Magnus does not go into the Skittles room to analyze. He just kind of just leaves the table. But a lot of GMs in that tournament would analyze with you after the game, and especially in the Skittles room. So to me, that was really fun to, for example, sit next to Anand and have him analyze his game and me analyzing my game, or Mickey Adams, these legends. All right, so any other questions? Okay, and on that note, I think we're pretty much done with today's class. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And you can now kind of, through this game at least, get to feel what it's like to face the world champ.